What's up, Internet, and welcome back to the Engadget Podcast. I'm Senior Editor Devindra Hardwar, this week joined by Senior Writer Sam Rutherford. Hey, Sam.
Hey, how's it going?
Going good. And also podcast producer Ben Ellman is here. Hey, Ben.
Hello.
Hello. We've got a new phone, which is nice. And also we've got the entire economic landscape on fire. So we'll talk a bit about all of those things. Sam has the Pixel 9a. His review of that just went up. And also we've all been just sitting back and waiting to see what the outcome is after the Trump administration announced the tariffs that they wanted to do last week. Kind of blew everything up right after the switch was announced. Now there's a 90-day pause, except bigger tariffs against China. So that actually applies to everything. We're not an economics podcast, but the prices affect everything we talk about. So sit tight, folks. We'll kind of break it all down for you. As always, if you're enjoying the show, please be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice. Leave us a review on iTunes and drop us an email at podcast@engadget.com. You can join us Thursday mornings around 11 a.m. Eastern at our YouTube channel where we do a live stream. Sometimes we show off gadgets. We often do Q&A. This week, Sam is going to have the Pixel 9a, so if you want to see that thing in action, go check out our YouTube channel. And let's get right to it, Sam. The Pixel 9a, when it was announced, you called it the new mid-range smartphone king.
hmm
Is that the case?
Yeah, my feelings haven't changed too much since I first only got a really quick
Mhm.
demo of it. But I mean, here's the breakdown. It's got the same chip as the basic Pixel 9, the regular Pixel 9, but it starts at $500, which is $300 less than the cheapest regular Pixel 9. Still has very nice screen, 120 hertz, same brightness as the regular Pixel 9, and they made some small tweaks. It has a plastic back instead of glass,
Mhm.
and the charging is a little bit slower. But really, so many times people ask me, it's like, "Hey, what should I get?" And a lot of times they're asking for for an iOS recommendation,
Right,
and which is
right.
like whatever. But if they're asking me, that, "Hey, what's a really just good simple Android phone, has good battery life, nice screen, takes good pictures?" This is your answer. It's the Pixel 9a. Because and for the price, it's just really really hard to beat.
It's I do wonder if this is the timing of this phone arriving now. This is it could be for a lot of people the go-to Tariff phone if you want a nicer experience. There are cheaper Android phones out there, but how is the camera? How does this compare to other phones you've seen, both cheaper and the bigger 9A or the
Yeah,
bigger 9?
so
Yeah.
um Google said that this is going to be the best camera phone under $500,
Mhm.
and I actually think they're kind of selling themselves a little short. I tested this thing head to head against the Galaxy S25 Ultra, and it definitely kept up. Obviously,
Mhm.
it doesn't have a dedicated telephoto lens, so you don't have quite that kind of same range for like shooting further stuff away. But in terms of pure image quality,
Mhm.
obviously people know that Google's night sight low light mode is super good, and even on what is supposed to be like a more affordable entry mid range phone, um, you know, it's got better white balance in low light. It's just generally sharper, more detailed in low light, and
Mhm.
so it also has a new macro focus mode, which is, I admit, a little bit finicky because you have to kind of play around to really hit that sweet spot for its focus.
Mhm.
But it's I'm not going to complain about another tool in the photography kit. And there's also your basic ultra wide angle lens, which obviously wasn't quite as good as the S25 used, but it's there and it's totally way more than serviceable.
Nice, nice. I mean, it does seem like this is everything we want, right? We were talking about oh man, we really wish Apple had priced that iPhone 16e at $500
hmm
or something cheaper. To get a phone for my parents are not Android people, but my mom needed a new phone. I had to get her a used, I think it was a 14 Pro, not a 14 Plus or 13 Plus, but a fairly recent iPhone. And it was 400-ish. And that's a good phone, but it's not a brand new phone with a new processor, new cameras and everything. And that's just the sort of thing you could do in Android world. So I don't want to bring my folks over to Android because I don't want to support them on Android. But
Fair enough.
if you are an Android, first person, the market is just wide open to you to have
Yeah.
great phones like this that don't cost too much.
And it's one of those things where it's like, this phone isn't super flashy. It doesn't really look
Mhm.
all that different from the regular Pixel 9. The camera back is a little bit different. It's almost flush, which is nice, but no one's gonna buy it for the camera module, right?
Mhm.
But it's like, there's this thing. It's like everyone always wants like the latest, greatest, super flashiest, like super premium device. But for day to day stuff, this is just a really good basic smartphone. It does all the things you needed to do. and a little bit more. And it has, a lot of Google's like really nice, software. Some of it is obviously AI powered, but
Hmm.
you still get the Pixel Recorder app, stuff like call assist, car crash detection,
Yeah.
all very nice features. And Google's going to support this thing just like the flagship devices, and you're going to get feature drops and stuff like that. I do want to call out that there is one Google app that I really wish was on the phone, but for
Hmm.
some reason, I asked Google and they just said, "Hey, we had to make compromises. It's not available." And that's the Pixel Screenshots app, which I have found to be just super useful. Since it came out last year,
Hmm.
just because I take screenshots all the time, and if I have 100, 200 screenshots, I don't want to go searching through them manually, just like having to like scroll through a billion different photos. And I can just ask the AI to like, hey, do some basic image recognition, see what's in the content of the photos and help me find stuff a little bit faster. Unfortunately, that's not available on the Pixel 9a, but
Hmm.
pretty much everything, every other kind of Google specific Pixel app is that includes like Gemini Live with video and the Pixel Studio kind of AI image generation app. So it's, really well rounded. And once again, we got to fall back on that price. You get 8 gigs of RAM, 128 base storage, but there's a 256 gig option. It's, a really good price, really good value, not super flashy, but I'm okay with that.
I almost wonder if we're entering like we are all tightening our belts a little for like an impending recession. I think a lot of people are worried about what this could mean. The sort of like what people used to do 100 years ago when they were really trying to like save money and survive. Is that are we going to have like a tech equivalent now, or is everybody going to be a little more like I'm going to use the smartphone for a lot longer? I'm going to get this thing repaired rather than be willy nilly. Is our sort of like freewheeling the way we would just like a lot of people would just upgrade stuff every year. I think some upgrades also feel just kind of frivolous. Is a lot of that going to go away and people are going to be like, I need more practical devices, more practical gadgets. I was thinking of like things I would need, as prices will skyrocket thanks to the wonderful new tariff initiatives. um and I was like, I don't actually need a new lawnmower. I guess I wanted one. I wanted
Yeah, yeah,
a new
yeah.
lawnmower, but I have a Greenworks that basically I inherited from family. It's still pretty good, and all I need to do is change the blade. So I'm gonna figure out how to replace, the blade for that lawnmower rather than buy a whole new thing. My dreams of building a NAS I talked about last week. I think I'm gonna put a hold on that because I have other ways to like store data and do it without outlaying a whole ton of cash. And I do wonder if people are going to think about that. Is that something you're thinking about, Sam, at this point?
Yeah, this is one of those things where it's like,
Mhm.
I was like, I was looking at like, what should we, how should we update our like our best
Right.
tablets guide? And I feel like tablets are one of those devices where like if you already have a tablet and it works and it's not
Mhm.
broken, that's probably one of those like kind of purchases that like
Oh yeah.
is not a core thing that you use every day. And it'd be nice to have a new tablet, but if it's gonna cost 10, 20, maybe 30% more, do you really need it? And so it's like it kind of feels like the austerity measures for like
Mhm.
the tech buying landscape is definitely here. And it's like, we talked about this like, months ago. It's like I'm in the like market for a new desktop setup, all new components, and
Mhm.
like that's definitely on hold. Like I gotta
Oh,
just
man,
wait
I'm
and
sorry.
see how things shake out before I commit $2,000 to like a bunch of new PC components.
Yeah, it's kind of rough. Speaking of tablets, right? Like I have, and we talk about this, like iPads. A lot of devices do last a long time. I have an iPad. I think it's 6th gen that I bought in like 2018 when my daughter was born. So that was 6 years ago. And even at that point, it was still a little older. So I bought it like for $200 basically, but still kicking. It's still like the thing we use to play videos for my son in the car. It's beaten up. The screen is cracked, but who cares? They can still watch Peppa Pig and it still works. It still gets
Yeah.
updated. So
I was at a briefing
yeah.
yesterday on the way back. I was walking past an Apple store and I walked in and I'm like, man, I do really like the iPad mini.
Mhm.
And it's not something that I need, but like, it would be really nice to just have on the coffee table next to the couch or
Right,
whatever.
right.
And I was like, it's just a really nice device. And, if I, wanted to use it for like, the kids while we're traveling, it seems like a really good fit for that. But
Mhm.
it's like, I can't really justify it. And it's like,
Right,
once
right.
again, it's like in this economy, what are we doing? We buying $500 tablets? It's like, it just like, it didn't make sense. And I was like,
Yeah.
maybe we'll wait on that one.
Paying more to buy a smaller tablet, that's like peak, that's peak capitalism, I guess. Like that's
Yeah,
we
yeah.
are. it's kind of funny. Like people will pay more to get the foldy phones. You're a foldy phone person now, Sam. I do.
Hmm.
Like that's experience you want to pay more for. But I do wonder, like those premium ideas, are we going to see fewer of those things as people kind of balk at prices? Like look at what happened with the Switch 2. Everyone's like, oh my god, I can't believe that's $450. And I think we all argued the tech in there is actually that's pretty good for what you're getting.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, everything is more expensive. But now, we'll talk about this. Nintendo has delayed Switch 2 pre-orders, potentially could even raise the price in the US. A Switch 2 at $500 base. Like, are people going to freak out even more about this? It's just a weird time we're in right now. So
Yeah, it
So
feels like a good time to just get into it.
yes,
one thing, an iPad mini is just a normal sized iPad for a child.
That's true.
So like you
but
got to think about
no,
proportionality.
you're paying more though. Like you pay more for the iPad Mini because it's an iPad Air. Like it has iPad Air hardware. So a normal size iPad for a kid actually is the cheaper one. The one for the iPad for the kid is the cheapest one, which is the base.
That iPad is too big for children's
It depends.
proportions though.
Which kids? Like anybody, if a kid is
I'm thinking about Sam's kids who are roughly like your oldest one is a toddler right now,
Yeah,
right?
he's like 3.5.
Yeah. So that is the
there's-
iPad mini is a proportional iPad for a 3-year-old.
you
Oh
don't
yeah, it's great.
it's great, but the base iPads, they're fine. They're perfectly fine because what you want to do is actually put a big chunky case on that sucker so the kids can hold it and grab it and throw it around and fine. So an iPad Mini would be better, but actually, the iPad is 10 inches, right? That's a 10
Yeah,
inch
yeah, yeah.
screen. It is.
I mean, the real answer is that you want to get these kids like a leapfrog pad that will teach them how to read and nothing else. Like,
Yeah,
I
I
think
wish.
I think we are definitely reaching the point of the backlash against iPad kids because, I mean, wow, do we have iPad kids in college now? I have heard stories of kids trying to get through college classes with an iPad and nothing but an iPad with like, one of those kind of typing pads.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Uh, it- I don't get it. I don't
A
get
lot
it.
of classes. That's all. Like if you're doing like a creative writing,
Don't
you're doing, like,
defend the iPad kids. That's not what I'm trying to
it's
do
a
here.
tools, different
It's
tools.
well, it's crazy. Like
Yeah,
my kid's not there yet, but my school, I think they assign first graders just a straight
Chromebook.
up laptop, and it's like, okay, I get it, but that feels a little bit too early to me. I don't know. I was talking to some other parents. I'm like, I would kind of like to just keep just computers out of the classroom until like fifth grade or something like that.
Yeah,
It's like
that
my
would make
daughter's in
sense.
kindergarten and they do the Chromebooks thing, and a lot of kids, kindergartens, first
Mm.
graders do it. They don't do it for everything. They do it for some things
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the reality of the situation is these kids are going to grow up in a world where they need to understand how these things work and do some of this work. It doesn't replace everything. It's like
Hmm.
10% of what they do, maybe if that. But it's a whole thing. But anyway, we're talking about the Pixel 9
Yeah, we're
at the
talking
moment.
about the Pixel 9, so
Yeah.
let's come back to the design of the phone. We got a good comment from Mears Nook in the chat that said, I think the transition from plastic to glass was pointless. I
Yeah.
remember the good old days of not being afraid to drop my phone.
Yeah.
That
So
is,
Yeah.
yeah, tell us more about
so
that,
if you
Sam.
remember way back in the day, phones went from plastic and then they went all metal in back. Remember? And the HTC
Metal in
One
back is
M7
also
was like
good.
was one of the handsets, and metal was great, except metal is
Can't
not good
charge.
for wireless charging. And
Yes.
so then they went back to plastic, and then people complained plastic doesn't feel fancy enough. And then we went through this whole cycle of we want the phones to look like luxury, watches and jewelry and stuff like that. And that's when glass got added in. And there is, some advantages to glass. Obviously, you can do wireless charging just like plastic. It does feel a bit nicer, but if most people throw their phone in a case, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And then there is, the definite like, recyclability, ecological aspect. It would probably be better to just use glass, which is made from sand. And so that's, a little bit, at least more sustainable feeling versus plastic. But from a price perspective, I have no complaints about it. I'm kind of holding it up right here, and it's
Mhm.
it's a very nice matte texture. And honestly, I think a lot of people, if they held it up and they just kind of touched it a little bit, they probably might not notice. And even the
Right.
weight difference is very similar. It's like less than half an ounce difference in terms of overall weight. This one's a tiny bit lighter, but not by
Mhm.
much.
I do remember when we started transitioning to glass backs on phones. It did seem like the dumbest idea, and that was which iPhone was it? Was it the iPhone 4, the iPhone 4 did that,
Hmm.
and then the Google Nexus 4 was like one of the big Android phones that did that. But I do miss the
Nexus.
metal
That's a
back
name I haven't heard in a long
Nexus.
time.
Uh, I miss the metal back phones, the HTC One. That sucker was so
I
beautiful.
still have one.
It's beautiful. I have it in a drawer here somewhere. But then like Apple kind of basically took that design, right, and kind of ran with it and did their own thing with it. So that was
Right.
funny. Also, metal backs are bad for reception too. So I think as we approached 5G radios and you needed bigger antennas,
Mhm.
metal is bad.
Mm,
And
Metal
then
blocks things.
one thing that
Yeah.
will probably piss off a lot of people is the transition to glass backs was also when we started getting non-replaceable batteries because
Yes.
if you remember back on, I think it was up to the Galaxy S5, they had a plastic back. You could take out the battery super easily, and then for the Galaxy S7 we went to glass, and that was sort of not a thing. And that was part of because people kept talking about, I want thinner and thinner phones, and I want better water resistance, stuff like that. And when you seal in the battery and you seal in the phone, you're eliminating some of those air gaps inside, and you're also making a little bit more water resistant. That said, the S5 did have an IP rating, so it's not like
Yeah.
you can't do it with a removable plastic back. But it's really interesting, kind of
Mhm.
trace what people were complaining about, or what people were wanted to see more on phones, and how the manufacturers kind of responded to that feedback.
I do wonder, like, so Pixel 9a, a great $500 phone. We were talking about, was it the One Plus? One of the new One Pluses. It's also like, or no, the Nothing phone.
Yep.
That's like newer and even cheaper, right? 450.
Yeah. Igor really liked both the three, Nothing Phone 3 and the 3A.
Hmm.
It just, at least in the US, because those phones are available only through Nothing's beta program, it
Hmm.
just is hard to recommend. If you were, enthusiasts, which a lot of people listening probably are, uh it's a little bit more approachable because, hey, you're kind of already in the space, you know how it works. But I can't recommend it to a random friend, or a parent who's not super tech savvy.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I feel like $500 for a lot of people, that's going to be a new baseline price for from what they want to get for smartphones. I wonder what this means for like the stuff they're projecting, like the whatever the next iPhone, the thin one, whatever they end up calling that, the iPhone 17 Air or
Hmm.
whatever, like stuff like that, where it's like you made this thing a couple millimeters thinner, right? Like, is it really going to change our lives? Are people really going to spend more for that, especially as they're sort of like trying to hold on to their money more, as they're worried about their jobs, as they're worried about the price of groceries and everything. That's sort of like
Yeah, I mean,
right,
it is not just the devices that are going on in price.
yeah.
Everything is getting increased.
So surviving itself is harder. Spending a little extra, a couple hundred more for a slightly thinner iPhone that will likely be missing some features too, because it won't have the additional cameras that are in the Pro models, and maybe less battery life than the base iPhone. That's a thing like I don't think a lot of people are going to deal with. So I
Yeah.
feel like the Pixel 9a is the phone of the era at this
Mhm.
point, or at least other phones like this that are pretty capable at $500. Do you think, like, is there a chance Apple would ever lower the price of the 16e, like in 6 months or so?
no.
I mean, maybe in a year or two. It's one of those things where Apple just, because they have such a commanding market,
Yeah.
force, they don't really lower prices until way later. They it's kind of like Nintendo. Nintendo never lowered the price of the, the
Mhm.
base Switch. They never lowered the price of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and stuff like
That's
that.
true. That's true. Also, no prices will be getting lower, right? The idea of like a
Yeah.
company just like lowering prices in general, like that is kind of a thing of the past. But I'm
Well,
almost
I mean,
wondering if
we'll also
America.
get into this probably later on, not like this week or
Mhm.
in the next month or so. But let's say these tariffs continue on and there is no like resolution between the Trump administration and China. That raises the price for new items. It also raises the prices for everything on the secondary market.
Mhm.
So think about what it was like trying to get a used car in like 2020, 2021. Like the used car market was crazy then.
I was there. It was bad. Yeah.
So the same thing is going to happen. You are going to try to get, an old iPad Pro because it was just a couple of weeks ago when we were saying like maybe all you need is it like the last gen model iPad Pro or last gen model
Mhm.
like iPhone. But that's going to be more expensive too now because prices for everything went up. That's
Mhm.
just how it is.
That will be a little tougher to tell because used cars are a thing where it's like that's a market that already exists and people are well aware of it. I don't think people are really aware that you could probably save some money if you go buy a slightly used or refurbished iPhone or iPad or whatever, and that maybe
Oh, they'll get
that's the
aware
thing.
really
They'll get aware.
fast.
They'll certainly get aware. So anyway, that's a whole thing. So you like the Pixel 9a, Sam? That's your ultimate takeaway here. Any like downsides to it? Is there something you wish it had that the Pixel 9 proper has?
Yeah, I mean,
You mentioned the screenshots app, yeah.
yeah, the screenshots app. I think charging would be faster. I gotta say, the wireless charging speeds caps out at 7.5 watts, which is like
Mhm.
pretty much as slow as it can possibly be on a phone. And so for kind of an example, I put the phone on a charger at 25%, and after 10 minutes, you got 5% extra battery on a wireless charger. So it is definitely, yes, it has wireless charging, but it's more of a convenience thing, and definitely not something you want to do if you like, hey, I need some extra battery because I'm about to run out the door. Plug it in, use a wire.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think for me, I would love to see telephoto lenses on a $500 device. I've seen it before. I know it's possible. Just because I personally think that telephoto lenses are a lot more usable on a day-to-day
Mhm.
basis than ultra wides.
Mhm.
But I know that is more of a subjective response.
It's so much more useful. Like taking pictures of your kids or doing things like
Or
in the
like you're
park.
at a concert, like it's a lot easier to zoom in than just walk up, when you have an assigned seat at a sporting event or whatever.
Exactly. So much more useful. Let's open up the do we have any questions from the chat about the Pixel 9a? I would love to have some time to answer those.
So we've
Yeah.
got another question from Mears Nook that says, I wonder if the 9A form, no camera bumps, will be adopted into any of the other Pixels, or will it be only for the A series? I'd love a Pro version with no camera bump and a large battery.
Yeah. So it's interesting because one of the things I asked Google about, like, hey, what the camera bar visor has been kind of a signature Pixel design thing for a long time, and they said that like because of some of the internal design changes, partly to the motherboard and partly to like some of the battery stuff that's going on, they kind of just found extra room inside the phone, and that kind of allowed them to make the back like almost completely flush, and so I think this was actually one of those cases where like, Google saw a little bit of room to pivot, and so they just did it and they didn't think too much about it.
Mhm.
So I can't say that like this is gonna become a design trend. Uh I like what they did with the Pixel 9a in terms of like the kind of flatness of the camera module, but it's really hard to say if it's gonna be like an ongoing thing.
Mhm. It's does anybody care like other than the people who are like oh kind of irked by the camera bump? Is that a thing normal people care about? I guess the main benefit would be you could fit in a bigger battery, and that is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. I feel like it's not because so many times when you put a case on it, the
Mhm.
case kind of levels
Right.
out the back of the phone anyways, and so yeah, to me this matters to like design connoisseurs and just nut jobs like me who just don't put cases on any of their devices.
This has a fast refresh rate screen, right?
Yes, up to 120 hertz.
That's what. Yes, that's all we want. Fast
Yeah.
refresh rate screens on everything. The Switch 2 is gonna have it. This has it. The iPhone 16e doesn't have it. God damn it. Or the
And
iPhone
there's
16. Yeah.
Mir's Nook is also like why the increase in size. There's no increase in size. Here, let me.
Mhm.
If you are, hopefully you're watching. I assume because you're in YouTube, that you are. Um, here's the uh basic Pixel 9, and
Mhm.
here is the Pixel 9a, exactly the same size.
Mhm.
Can you show the
Um,
backs though?
okay, yeah. So
See,
big,
okay, so that camera
very
bump
big
gets
camera
stuck
bump.
on your pants. It gets stuck on the pocket as you're trying to
There you go.
slide it
This is
into your
probably good
pants.
side angle comparison.
Like
I don't
that would
know.
be my complaint about this camera bump.
Does that happen to you? Like Ben, you have a phone with a camera bump now, right? So
No,
is it a thing? You
no.
don't. It's I don't know. I think at least for jeans and men's pants, like it's not a huge deal. My main worry is like when you drop the phone, that it's kind of an exposed thing for the lens. Like it makes
Oh
it
yeah,
a bigger target.
yeah.
I've never smashed the lens,
So
so
that's actually one thing that people really like nitty gritty detail. One of the things phone designers have told me in the past is that they like camera bumps because it prevents people from smudging their lens quite as much
Mhm.
because there's a little like protrusion to kind of catch your finger on.
Mhm.
And so I haven't really noticed that I have to like wipe this phone down more than others, but that was one of the like small like kind of design wisdoms of like when camera bumps started to become like a lot more popular. Yeah.
That's a good point. Especially older family members who do not understand like their phones and everything. Like I often video call them, and their stuff looks like garbage. They're like, "I got a new phone. What's happening here? It's clean
Just clean it, yeah.
camera lens.
And
It's
and
wonderful."
phones nowadays will tell you to like, hey, your lens looks a little bit dirty. You might want to clean it. Yeah.
You damn
Let's
pig.
jump
Yeah.
back to talking about processor speeds for a second because
Mhm.
Mo Esquire is asking whether or not this is has a processor with a similar snappiness to
Yeah,
the
it feels
baseline Pixel.
it feels very similar. It has the same core count. And a lot of times, like on the cheaper versions of phones, they will kind of reduce the core count, even though it's like this technically
Mhm.
the same processor. Um, Benchmarks were almost identical across the board, so it definitely feels snappy. You just have less RAM, so that kind of impacts in terms of like your multitasking, or you have a bunch of apps running in the background, or have a like a more intense game that needs that sucks up a lot about RAM when you're playing it.
Mhm.
But in day-to-day use, feels just as snappy as a regular Pixel.
That's probably why there's no Pixel Screenshots app, right? Because you need the RAM to run like the models to do
Yes,
AI work needs RAM. That was
yeah, that's
yeah.
sort of Google hasn't said it outright, but that's kind of like my thought process.
Mhm.
There are some things, and it says Google still hasn't really confirmed this, but a lot of people are speculating that the version of Gemini that runs on the Pixel 9a is kind of a slightly more streamlined one,
Mhm.
just to be able to like handle more efficiently with less RAM on the phone compared to the standard Pixel 9, which has 12 gigs instead of 8.
Gotcha. Mirror's Nook, by the way, is saying they were talking about the size difference between the 8A and the 9A.
Oh, I believe they're the same size, but can't let me double check that.
If the 9 got bigger than the 8 in general, like the plain phone, then the A phone will tend to like follow suit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the Pixel 8a has a 6.1-inch screen, but
Mhm.
it had slightly bigger bezels. So the size increase is really minimal. This is not, unless you have like absolutely tiny hands, you probably wouldn't notice all that much. And that's kind of a trend that we've seen in smartphones. Going back, multiple years, where the the listed spec dimension of the screen has been going up, but because the bezels and just like the efficiency and like kind of companies have gotten better at streamlining the displays, the phones actually haven't gotten that much bigger. Just the bezels have shrunk.
That's a good
That
point. That's a good
that said, the Pixel 9a does have tiny, and I do mean very tiny, slightly larger bezels than the regular 9,
point.
but you would only notice if you hold them up side to side. So it's not that it doesn't really kind of it didn't rise to be like a straight up con for me when I was reviewing the 9A.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Any other questions? I think we could just move on. But Pixel 9a, good phone. You give it a high score, Sam. Would you give it 91?
Yeah, this is like one of those clearest, like easiest, like
Mhm.
editor's choice, awards that we've given, because just really good value for the price. And like I said before, if you don't need like a big multitasking phone and you're not a heavy gamer or mobile gamer, it just it hits kind of all the sweet spots of, let's cover the core bases: good screen, great cameras, good battery life, and very good software that comes from the Pixel family. It's pretty much got everything you need, and not a ton of extra fills, which is okay.
Awesome.
In fact, I would say that Apple kind of beefed it here. Like,
We've been saying this over and over.
yeah,
Yeah.
but like, let's say it again because too many
Yeah,
people
it's just a
leave
hundred
us
dollars too much.
reviews
Yeah.
saying, "Why the heck are you so in the tank for Apple?" No, like Apple released its version of like the S Box Series S and X here. Like it's a thing that nobody really wants, that doesn't have very good exclusives. It doesn't even have the smarter Siri that they were promising, and it's more expensive for why?
Mhm.
Like maybe the vague possibility of being able to use like generative AI sometime in the future.
It
Cool,
gets the
cool,
smart
cool.
Siri eventually, so I don't want to knock that against the 16E at this point. That's part of the reason it's probably so expensive. But you're
Are
right.
you trying to placate the general artificial
I'm being
intelligence then?
accurate about what we know and what we don't know. That's all. But I do think I agree. The 16E, as we've said this over and over, it is $100 too expensive. It is doesn't have things we think a phone like this should have, like a higher refresh rate screen. give us a higher refresh rate, good quality LCD over a 60 hertz OLED. Like OLED looks better. Objectively, I agree. But it looks better when you're staring at it still and when you're not moving around. And what we do with our phones is scroll and move things and play games.
And
And
a
those,
single camera just feels weird,
yeah.
even
Yes,
on
yes,
like a mid-range
especially.
entry level
Yep.
whatever device.
So I do feel like, I mean, prices in general will not be going down anytime soon for anything because these companies are all, as we are worried about our wallets and everything, these companies are worried about like what their financials will look like. So the discounts that come out of nowhere will be probably be a thing of the past, and we'll see what happens to the 16e. But I do wonder if Apple's going to learn a few lessons from this, seeing how good a phone like the Pixel 9a is and all those nothing phones as well. But yeah, we will continue covering all this stuff. I'm sure you're going to have more coverage from the 9a coming at some point, Sam, because there's AI features. Maybe we'll want to compare to see how like the 9 and AI 9a work in the future with stuff that Google announces. So stay tuned for all of that. Let's move on to some other news, and actually a new section, which we should just dub Tariff Watch. Because just like our AI stupidity section, where we have to dive into things, or what Elon Musk is doing to destroy the American government, now it's tariffs we're worried about. And last week we talked about the fact that the Trump administration announced their global tariffs. Now, because everything's so capricious and you can't really bet on anything. Yesterday, they were like, no, let's put a pause on that. Let's put a 90-day pause on the tariffs. There will still be 10% tariffs going to all the other countries, but pause on all the tariffs except for China, which is now 125%. And in response, China has reciprocally tariffed U.S. imports going into China as well. It's a fun time. It's a really fun time we're living
On the
through.
other hand, I know
Yeah,
a bunch of penguins that are really happy that their shiny rocks that they found have a market in the US again.
yeah. Shout out to the Penguins. But what did this mean? Like, basically, after we recorded our episode last week, which I think we were pretty, I was pretty positive on the Switch 2. I understand the price is a big deal and people have complaints. The next day, Nintendo was like, can we delay this? On Friday, April 4th, Nintendo sent out a few statements to two news sites. It wasn't a press release, it wasn't a tweet, it wasn't like a wide thing. Here's the exact statement they sent. Pre-orders for Nintendo Switch 2 in the US will not start on April 9th in order to assess the potential impact of tariffs and evolving market conditions. Nintendo will update timing at a later date. The launch date of June 5th, 2025 is unchanged. That's the sort of like weirdness we're going to see for all sorts of products. And Nintendo, it just turned out Nintendo's timing was terrible because they announced this thing right as the tariffs were announced. I'm seeing reports that we don't know if this is fully true, but there are reports going out there that a whole bunch of Nintendo Switch 2s out of Vietnam, which wasn't hit as badly as China, but they were apparently being built there. Nintendo's just like, we're going to ship those suckers out, get those out before any more tariffs are announced. So that's
Mm,
perhaps one thing that's happening. And maybe we won't see a price increase for this, but a lot of these companies are just going to be scrambling to do crazy stuff like this. And not everybody's Nintendo. Not everybody can be like, we need to put 2 million Switch 2s on a ship and it's our ship. Apple can do this. Other big companies can do this, but not many. So I do feel like this is going to be a problem
Yeah.
for
So
smaller
someone
companies.
mentioned it in chat, but I
Yeah.
want to bring it up too because there was a story about how Apple is flying planefuls of
Yeah.
iPhones to the US to kind of beat the tariffs, which is just like the most insane thing.
Most
And then
thing. Yeah.
I was gonna say, you know who I feel really bad for? I feel bad for the Canadians because the Canadians got their Switch 2 pre-orders delayed too,
Yeah.
and it seems like it's largely the US's fault. And it's just like,
They all ship to
come
North
on.
America and probably go to Canada. There's probably the story there. Yeah, and related to the iPhone thing is that there are reports of people rushing to Apple stores to buy iPhones because what happens with economic
I
uncertainty,
might be one of
prices.
them.
Oh
Ugh.
yeah, you should have done that. We every week, Ben, we keep saying, "Oh my God,
Every week, our tiny mini podcast. Will Ben get a new iPhone
will Ben get a new
finally?
iPhone?" The world, yeah, come on, Ben, get that iPhone. But for a lot of people, this is going to be the wake up call to be like, "Oh, I got to get this new thing because it's going to get a lot more expensive." Honestly, like that's one thing I did. Like as my wife and I, we were planning to remodel our kitchen. A very boring thing, but a thing that costs a lot of money and requires a lot of supplies and resources. And as the Trump administration was coming in, and there was talk about like all the things they would do, it's like we gotta get this done. And probably will have saved like $10,000 doing it in January versus like later this year or something.
Mm.
This is true for a lot of devices, true for lots of things.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
also EV sales were up in March,
Hmm.
because I think people were like kind of rushing to beat the tariffs and on top of
Yeah.
in case that tax incentive ever goes away, which will people were largely expecting to happen, and so
Mhm.
yeah, people are just like, what do I need right now, and can I get it before the tariffs? And if I can't, then maybe we're just gonna wait.
You just wait it out basically. Speaking of smaller companies, there was a story. Razer has paused direct sales of its laptops in the US, so you cannot buy it directly from the Razer website. You can still go to Best Buy or wherever and get those things, but that's a sign. Like that's a sign that they're not willing to deal with like whatever the tariffs that they're going to have to basically price their computers a lot more coming in. They just don't want to deal with that right now. So sales done. Framework has paused some laptop sales. It's raised prices of some laptops by 10%. Framework is a tiny company.
Hmm.
Razer's a huge company, at least when it comes to laptops and PC hardware. It's no Nintendo, but it's pretty big. Framework is like a tiny little thing that's just trying to make repairable laptops. Like it's stuff like that. Those really cool ideas, those really small companies, they're going to be crushed by a
And
lot
it's
of
sad
things.
because I
Yeah.
think Framework has offices in Taiwan, which has a
Yep.
separate tariff rate than China proper. And then, but and they said they were raising prices by 10%, and they were going to eat just some of the costs
Yeah.
on the other, because they were saying prices for components were going up by 30%, and so it's just like, even if you are based in other countries, a lot of times the components that you need are coming from China, and they're going to have to deal with those increases on pricing too. So it's just really depressing.
Very it's things are pretty bad, folks. And when you hear people talking about like, oh yeah, we're going to bring back manufacturing jobs and build iPhones in the US, there is so much reporting about how that is kind of impossible. And yeah, it sucked. It the early, especially
You
like
want a synopsis of why that's impossible?
many
My
reasons.
brother in Christ, where do you think the manufacturing stuff comes from? We don't even make our own precision tools
We
anymore.
don't we don't make
So, in
that.
order to stand up factories, we need to buy those industrial machines from other countries.
And people are like, well, hey, the car company shut down this auto factory in Detroit or something. We could just spin that right back up. But no, those people have other jobs. Those people
Yeah,
have
yeah.
gone.
I want to give it a shout out to Jason Kebler. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, from
Kevlar, yeah.
404
Oh, wait,
Media.
4044, yeah.
Yeah, he came out with a really good story the other day, earlier this week, about how the idea of a US made iPhone is pure
Yes.
fantasy. And he does a really good breakdown of like, just it doesn't make sense because even if you could spin up plants in under a year, all the components are coming from so many other places across the world that the idea of everything that you need to make an iPhone could be produced in the US just isn't a reality.
I
Yeah.
think there was a spate a few years ago where people were talking about the iPhone as like, oh wow, like look at, it's the perfect like avatar of like global supply chain because like all of its little components come from so many different places. And that was just like a moment of appreciation for like how far we've come as a global economy. Now it's more of a liability,
Mhm.
Well, there's that. I mean,
but it's a self-imposed
it's
liability.
not all rosy too. Like it is that is part of it, but also there was a lot of reporting early on about like how bad Foxconn was, like the working conditions for the people there, and
Oh,
how
100%.
terrible the conditions were the factory workers. That would we would have to replicate some of that here in the U.S. I do think part that's never going to happen. And it shouldn't happen. And this whole story too is a reminder of like the work that goes into building our devices and how hard it is, and how other countries don't treat people well to make these things. I was just reading who is it? Brian Merchant's book, Blood in the Machine. I was listening to the audiobook about that, which was about basically the creation of the iPhone, I believe. And we've forgotten a lot of that. We've forgotten the Foxconn suicides. We've forgotten like how bad the working conditions were and
Yeah,
how
the
a lot of
fact that they had to
backlash.
put up nets in
They had
order
to
to
put up
keep people
nets
from jumping out the windows.
because they were
Right.
overworking. They were working people really hard to build these things. And on our perspective, what we get is a shiny new iPhone every year. And in China, for a lot of people, it meant like work and turmoil. The flip side of that is like a lot of those people got paid better than they would if they had like a job in their village or something. But still, there's still like so many human costs and things we've not really thought about. So it feels like we're gonna have a reckoning for the entire like consumer electronics industry in general, right? Like
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's also just like kind of the capitalist mindset, because part of the reason why a lot of those jobs got shipped overseas, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, it's just some economist looked and be like, hey, it costs this much labor in the US to make a phone, whereas labor costs in China are much cheaper. And then even now we've seen companies shift from China to places like Vietnam or India because labor costs are even lower in those countries. And unless you somehow manage to like equalize that across the globe, it's people always be like, hey, we can save a lot of money by shipping labor overseas.
yep. So I think a lot of people. By the way, the book is it's The One Device from Brian Merchant. Blood in the Machine is the book he just did about the Luddites, which is also really interesting. I need to check that out. But The One Device, The Secret History of the iPhone, is a well worth a read or audiobook listen or whatever. One thing I think some people have brought up is that some devices just may not exist anymore. Like you may not be able to buy them anymore. It's sort of like thinking back to like, we had the Concorde as an airplane, in the 70s. That thing was flying at supersonic speeds between New York and was it New York or Boston? But New York, like East Coast to London. That tech doesn't exist anymore for many, many reasons. And I think back to like the cheap consumer shit that we got over the past decade, the past 15 years. I think the one I keep coming back to is like drones. I don't maybe we should not have a widespread availability of cheap drones out there, which is, military technology that was quickly translated to be like fun little consumer toys. But for a lot of like for some people, yeah, you could take videos all over, you can make action videos or whatever. But for everybody else who doesn't own a drone, it's a loud, annoying thing that tends to disrupt your peace. It's a privacy invader. Like it's all of these things. And I feel like, yeah, maybe we should think a
You're
little
being
harder
pretty
about that.
prescriptive
I
here.
mean,
We're gonna get
look,
some angry emails from drone
Fine.
fans.
well, I mean, there was rumblings,
there. Yeah.
the past year about, hey, are we going to ban DJI because they're a quote
Yes.
unquote security risk? Chinese company, by far the biggest maker of drones. Almost
Yeah, I
anytime you
mean, if we
see,
don't allow Huawei things to connect to our network, why would we allow DJI? Like, why
I'm
does
not
that
even
exist?
calling for the DJI thing. I'm talking about drones in general. But yeah,
yeah,
who's
yeah,
making all the drones now? It's DJI. It's a lot of companies in China. I'm just saying that idea of like, oh, this cool tech that 5 years ago was really expensive. Now it's something I could buy for $200 and just like dick around with in my backyard. That era maybe over. Like we may not be seeing those things for a while, and you may want to hold on to your old tech guys. Get
So
those
to
things
put a
repaired.
bow
Yeah.
on this section, I want to shout out something Declan said in the chat. When spokespeople talk about short-term pain for long-term gain,
Mhm.
I'm reminded of that scene from Shrek when Lord Farquaad says, "Some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make."
Basically. If you could say that and then go off to the golf course saying life will be hard for you, don't worry about it. I'm going to go play golf for the weekend. Seems like there's something wrong with that. So
Speaking of
anyway,
the Trump administration, they kicked the can down the road for the TikTok deal by another
sure.
75 days.
This is going to
There's
happen every time. This is going to
Yeah,
happen
and
every
there's
single
some
time.
reporting in Reuters saying that they were actually close to a TikTok deal, but then China was like, "Hey, wait, you put tariffs on all of our stuff. No, we don't want to do a deal
You
with you."
tariffed us by 100%. No, thank you.
So there is
Yeah,
not a week since 2016 or so when I haven't thought about that meme of the guy who puts a stick in his own bicycle spokes and then
one of my
blames someone
favorites.
else
yep.
for it. So I think the bike is the TikTok deal, the stick is the tariffs, and then they'll blame Gen Z or something for being so insistent that TikTok stays around or
Yeah, just
something.
constant
Like,
self-inflicted injuries.
Yeah. In other news, Samsung's cute Bali robot could be arriving this summer with Google Gemini. I don't think this is going to happen. I think this is talk about like superfluous, like useless tech. I don't think we're gonna see Bali
But
actually. What do
I,
you guys think?
Dev,
Yeah,
Dev, I want it to be real.
I know. I want it to be
I've
full.
seen Bali come out on stage like 4 or 5 different times over the last 6 or 7 years, and it's a cute little ball. It kind of reminds me of Haro from Gundam. A little like
Hmm.
happy little robot. I would love to have something like that just rolling around my floor. I don't even
yeah,
have
but do you want
pets.
to pay for it? You want to have it. You don't want to pay for it.
Look, we can get to the cost. once they actually make it, because they've been talking about making Bali for so long, and
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
put it. If I will be so happy, I don't even care how much it costs. I just want to see a product listing with a real buy button that someone out there can actually press. Uh, Look, Samsung, I would love to review this thing. Please, talk to us. They have put out an announcement that it's coming and it's gonna be available. I just want it to be real.
I would love for Bali to be, but I'm talking. This is what I'm talking about, by the way. Like the weird superfluous tech experiments. Like this stuff may not. It may be too expensive to release these things. Like by the time they actually want to. The thing I want. I don't. Did you see the cute Star Wars droid Sam that was at the end of the Nvidia GTC thing?
No,
Where
I missed that.
it's like one of those
Something
cute little
similar to BB-8, perhaps?
not BB-8. It wasn't rolling like BB-8, but it's like one of those little bots
Hmm.
that like walk around the floor and had two legs. It had eyes and it like looked very anime. I was like, you know what? I've had the BB-8 like rolling toy before. It's fine. My cats love it, but you can't really do much with it. But have like a little bot with its own personality that could just like walk around your house, act as a security guard, but also be like a cute little gremlin or something.
Yeah.
Like that would be
Well, I
cute.
mean, like
Yeah.
I was walking around Jersey City the other day, and we have little delivery drones,
Yes.
and they wink at you, or like they put little heart eye emojis, like if you like kind of move to get out of its way, and it's like these are like the most polite little bots on the street. They just make me happy, kind of seeing them around. I would love to have one in my home.
Yeah. I'm gonna pull up a video here. Um, I love this bot. I love this bot, and I love everything about it. The bot was named the Blue, and this had been shown before. I believe it's part of like Disney's like. Look at it. Look at the eyes. Look at the
Oh, okay,
eyes.
yeah, no,
It's
it
so
looks
cute.
like another one of the kind of Star Wars bots that you see, like, walking around in the
Yeah,
background, but it never really has a name.
like little here. Here is it next to Jensen. That thing is moving. It has like it moves like a cat. It moves like an animal. It seems like it has a personality,
It just
and
looks happy.
it looks happy, and this part of this was that it was potentially trained using some of NVIDIA's tools. So, like the AI learning tools, and where it learns the environment and does training and stuff. But like, give me a cute little happy bot. Again, a superfluous thing that may not exist for a long time, but maybe this could do things. Maybe this could be a security bot. Maybe this could be like, hey, your pet made a mess on the floor, or send you a phone alert or something. But yeah, give us cute bots. We want cute bots. Be it Bali or this thing. I love Blue. Anyway.
So we do have some listener mail that I want
Mhm.
to shout out, and we're going to try to start including YouTube comments on our live streams as listener mail. And we want to shout this one out because it's way less stinky than all of our usual YouTube comments. Leave us some nice YouTube comments in addition to sending us some good emails at podcast@engadget.com. So user Hippo Cheese says on YouTube that it's ironic. This is in relation to the Switch 2. And they say that it's ironic that you guys started off in the podcast acknowledging that 1080p doesn't go as far as it used to. This is in relation to, I think I was talking about the quality of my own camera, because I have a 1080p camera. I'm pretty sure Sam has a 1080p camera.
Mhm.
And then a little later in the show, it seems like we're falling for the numbers game here, similar to thinking that more pixels equals better quality, just because the Switch 2 can do 1080p at 120 hertz and 4K at 60 FPS doesn't mean anything. They say I can do 4K 240 hertz on all AAA games on my RTX 2080 if I set all graphics settings to potato minimum.
I mean that's a good point. I don't think we were the main thing I was saying about the Switch 2 is like we have to see this. We have to see this in action and see it reach what Nintendo see and see what those things actually look like. But that is a good point. You could say whatever you want with numbers. You could run Pong. You could run some like really low res games at 1080 240 or 1080 120 or 4K 60 and technically you made that happen. I feel like that's something Sony did with the PlayStation 4 a bit. Like they had announced some specs for some games or something. Certainly the PlayStation 5. Not many things actually hit 120 hertz. Yeah, it's not necessarily going to look better. There has been some good discussion around what is actually powering the Switch 2. Nintendo is not developing full specs. Nvidia has said some things that, hey, we have, Nvidia has admitted like there's DLSS, there's AI upscaling in the Switch 2, like in the chip they're using. We don't actually know like comparatively how powerful it is. The folks at Digital Foundry have done like some of their research, and they're like maybe it's about as powerful as a PlayStation 4, maybe a little better. To do some like was AI upscaling, you could be a little better. There's a lot we still need to see with the Switch 2. So yeah, I'm saying those numbers because Nintendo put a 120 hertz screen on that device. So that's the other thing. So Nintendo's not a company that makes a huge expense in its hardware. Um, they tend not to put things in if it's going to cost too much. So I feel like they may see some benefit from that.
Yeah.
Also, 1080p to 120 hertz is not a hard get. It's actually you can do that pretty easily, especially with games using Nintendo's art style and everything. It's the 4K 60 where I'm like, I don't know if you can really do that. I don't quite
Yeah.
believe them there.
I want to
That's
say,
probably going to be docked only.
Yeah, no, it's definitely docked only. We talked about that. You have the dock, and the dock has a fan, and they're going to crank it up. Yeah.
I have to say, like, this is kind of conflating a bunch of different things.
Yep.
I think the general sentiment is like it's kind of interesting, but you talk about like more megapixels equals better quality, and that was kind of like became a kind of a red herring to a certain extent. But
Mhm.
like for example, the Pixel 9a that I just reviewed had a 48 megapixel main camera, except when you actually take photos on it, the photos are 3000 by 4000. Now if you do the math on that, that's actually only 12 megapixels, because it's not just you can't just look simply at the numbers, because there's they're doing pixel binning, they're kind of combining some of these, and this has several effects on, hey, if you combine the kind of pixels, you get more light sensitivity, which is really
Mhm.
good for low light photos. And so it's not, you can't, we've gotten to kind of to the point where you can't just straight up look at the numbers. You have to do a little bit more kind of deeper digging into what do these numbers actually mean, and how much value are you really getting out of it. And this kind of goes back to this saying is like, there's no reason to upgrade from like a 120 hertz monitor or
Mhm.
display to 144 hertz, because that gap is so small, you're not really going to notice anything. That said, 720p to 1080p is a difference that almost everybody can discern. And kind of the same thing where you jump from 60 FPS to 120 FPS is once again a difference that a lot of people can actually just, oh, I can see this right away. And so, I can do 4K 240 hertz on all AAA games. Yeah, if you turn down the graphics, and if you're playing competitive games, there actually is a reason for that, because it kind of
Mhm.
reduces latency and stuff like that.
And also, if you
So
have the monitor that even supports that resolution, only like the newest monitors have done that. So that's another thing. Like if you have an RTX 2080 system, I don't think you have a 4K 240 hertz
mhm.
monitor that you're attached that to. The Switch, what we do know is it has a 1080 120 hertz screen. So that is
With HDR, and I can tell you just from the previews, the difference from the original Switch screen or even the Switch OLED screen to the Switch 2 is night and day. It is such an obvious improvement. It might not come across in photos, but if you hold this thing in your hands, you can eliminate all the stuff about specs and frame rate and resolution and all that. If you just look at the screens, it looks so much better, and it's very obvious. And
yeah.
so it kind of, one of those things is like doesn't translate in terms of numbers, but in person you definitely notice a difference.
Yeah, I don't think that again, like I don't think Nintendo, if they didn't see the market difference with the 120 hertz like modes and stuff, I don't think they would have done it at all, because this is a company that essentially reused the GameCube's hardware after the GameCube failed and was like, we're going to put it in a white box and we got motion controllers now. How about that?
And you know what? It
A
worked.
phenomenon. It was a phenomenon. So it's sort of like Nintendo is not the sort of company to be like, we've got the fastest processor in the world. That's what Microsoft did. Microsoft was like, we made the fastest console you've ever seen. Nobody cared because Sony had all the exclusives and Nintendo had like the smaller like portable console like as its own like little gimmick. So there's a lot we still need to see. But I'm still like pretty excited about the Switch 2. I'm worried about price changes. We'll see.
That said,
We'll see what's
I,
happening.
I still think it's a very valuable comment, because it's like kind of it's something good to think about in terms of you looking at a spec sheet, you're looking at numbers,
Mhm.
and you're trying to figure out how does this translate into real world performance. And I think that's always a very important question to ask.
I do think, Sam, maybe you're overselling the general user a little bit, because I don't think people will see the difference between 720p and 1080p. Like that, it's that sort of thing. Like there was a difference from 480p, right? From SD, from DVDs to any sort of HD. That was the massive leap. But I keep seeing like people I know, people techies who have like certain things set up like you're playing that at 720p or you're watching this YouTube video. Can you flip that to 1080p? And most people do not care, or they
Yeah,
can
yeah,
see
yeah.
the functional difference in their monitors. It's that sort of, but it's the leap from 480p.
So I'm definitely talking to our audience who I appreciate that they're a little bit more tech savvy. But I think the other thing is like when you're looking at YouTube, I've noticed people do the same thing all the
Yeah.
time. I think it's just because they just let the defaults, you know, dictate kind of the
Yeah.
content that they watch.
YouTube
Whereas
wants
if
to give you 720p because that's
because
less money for YouTube to
yeah,
pay
yeah.
for bandwidth.
So I've done the same thing that you just and it's like you flip the switch from 720p to 1080p and people go, "Oh, that does look better." Now sometimes you're right. Some people don't see it. I'm not going to argue that. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of times a little education goes a long way and people's like, "Oh man, like I'm going to start doing this all the time."
Mhm. I also don't know if people will actually see the difference between 60 hertz and 120 hertz. But the thing is, the Switch, the frame rate you typically saw was 30 FPS. That's what you were typically seeing. So to have a device that can even like give you 60 FPS standard on most things, like that is a huge improvement. That's like a night and day difference. And then 120 FPS is just butter. Like that's just like, oh, Mario Kart looks even smoother now as you're moving faster. So those are the things I'm excited about because like, hey, even Apple is not budging beyond 60 hertz or 60 FPS on the iPhone, on the base iPhone. And it's wild to see Nintendo, the company that reused the GameCube's hardware for another like almost 10 years, to basically plug that in there.
Yeah, people forget the Tegra processor that was
Yep.
in the original Switch was already 2 or 3 years old
Mhm.
when the Switch launch happened, and so it's like you know, Nintendo has defied a lot of expectations in terms of getting more out of the hardware that's in their system than pretty much
Mhm.
any other device maker. So, I tend to give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt. But even from that, my hands, like, what I've seen at the previews and stuff, the hardware is definitely a jump, without a doubt, a jump up in, generation over generation.
Most definitely. So I cannot wait to see that. Let's move on to what we've been working on. Sam, or actually around Engadget, Nathan Ingram reviewed The Last of Us season 2, which is coming soon to Mac. So I'm looking forward to seeing that and seeing what the dialogue around that is because
Very
have
excited.
you
Yeah.
played The Last of Us 2? Ben,
I,
have you played it? I'm wondering
I know the
specifically.
story, and I know that
Okay.
people
Things
should look
happen.
out.
Things
Yeah.
happen. Sam, like, yeah, are you excited for this season?
Yeah, this is like I let my HBO subscription kind of lapse like 6 or 7 months ago, but
Mm-hmm.
between this and White Lotus, I feel like it's time to restart that subscription. Now's a really good time.
Maybe
Two
not
two
White
really good
Lotus.
shows to check out.
White Lotus is not the one to do for the. There's so many other good shows right now on Max. Common Side Effects I've talked about.
Hmm.
The other, what was it, the WB show, the DC show, the cartoon version to Creature Commandos. That's a lot of fun. So yeah,
Hmm.
you've got a lot of reasons to check it out. Last of Us season 2 coming soon. Nate really liked it, but real talk, Nate loves everything Last of Us. I feel like Nate has played The Last of Us Part 1 at least 3 or 4 times all the way through because they keep re-releasing it and we've like done like multiple reviews of that thing. Amazing stuff. I can't wait to see what they do with that. Let's move on to what we're working on. Hey, I'm testing that LG 240 hertz monitor. No, the 480 hertz monitor. I need to see
Ooh,
how
nice.
that
Yeah, yeah.
actually
Just released pricing for
performs.
those. I believe recently.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Sam, what are you up to?
So I'm working on the Rivian R1S review that I got the general Generation 2 that I got to test out a little while back. And this is kind of probably a good timing because the New York Auto Show is next week too. So I'll be attending that. Not so sure how much we're gonna get in terms of just like global debuts, but it's always nice because cars are big and hard to move around to be able to go to one place and see
Mhm.
a bunch of like the modern offerings from a bunch of different automakers all in the same place.
That's cool. I hope the Volvo will probably have their electric sedan, the one that they had just announced. So that would be cool to see.
Yeah, yeah.
I've said
I believe Rivian is gonna. I mean, sorry, not Rivian. Lucid
yeah,
is gonna have the Gravity there. So
nice.
that's definitely one I'm looking forward to checking out.
Have you seen the R3 yet? I feel like the Rivian
Not in
R3 is
person.
fantastic.
I've
Yeah.
I think everyone can agree that that car looks awesome,
Mhm.
and they've been kind of doing like a tour around the country where they'll bring it to like certain dealers, Rivian dealerships or
Mhm.
showrooms. But I haven't seen it in person yet. I would love, hopefully, that will be there, but I'm not sure.
I kind of like I spent a lot of time like researching family cars and stuff too. But now it's gotten to the point where my kids are often having activities and different things, and my wife is doing different things, and sometimes I have a screening to go to. I'm like, can I justify a cutie patootie little EV?
Yeah.
Just as a second car, and it's kind of like, oh, that would be nice with the Rivian. Probably be the Hyundai Ioniq, except prices.
Yeah.
Everything's going to explode, folks. It's gonna be a bad time. Let's move on to our pop culture picks for the week. I just want to shout out. I just reviewed Black Mirror season 7, and my review is basically all bangers. It's all bangers. It's all very very good. Weirdly, it feels kind of cathartic. It feels kind of cathartic and therapeutic to watch Black Mirror now because the world is so bad. Like just looking at the news,
Dev, I
it's so
think that's just you. You've said
oh,
so
that's just me.
often that you love to externalize your emotions by watching
Mhm.
stressful things on TV.
I've said that.
That is not everybody.
I
Well,
listen. Is everybody else not stressed by the news right now?
Oh,
You know,
I'm just saying not
that's
everybody likes to
stressful.
externalize it.
but
Yeah, that's
I
stressful.
appreciate.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say I appreciate it too because a lot of times the stuff in Black Mirror is clearly worse than what's going on in the
yes,
world.
it is.
So it's like it's almost like yeah, the current times are kind of screwed up, but at least we're not Black Mirror.
That's basically it. Things are bad, but at least there's not killer AI trying to take over the world or a company that's renting out access to your brain, which are things that happen in Black Mirror season 7. So I think it's a pretty strong season. Great actors, great writing, some sequels. There's a bit of a sequel episode to Bandersnatch that is a lot of fun, I think, and they even released a companion game to that. And there's an episode with Paul Giamatti called Eulogy, which is incredible. I think one of the best things ever to come out of Black Mirror, but also one of the best performances from Paul Giamatti. If you've seen him in Sideways, what was it, The Leftovers, the movie that had came out a couple years ago too. He is a tremendous actor, but he's also, I think, one of the greatest actors when it comes to like showing longing and regret, and somebody who regrets much of their life, and that is fully on display there too. Anything you want to shout out, Sam?
Yeah, I want to
Mhm.
shout out
Yep.
Moonrise. I have not seen any advanced episodes or anything like that, but it's a new anime that comes out I believe this Friday on Netflix or maybe today actually.
Okay.
And so the pedigree is really good. It's being done by Wit Studio, which is the same studio that does Attack on Titan and some other stuff that you might hear about. The character designer is I believe it's the author from Full Metal Alchemist,
Hmm.
and it's an anime original story. So there's no like manga that you need to like read beforehand or
That's fun.
and so I just go check out the trailer if you can. I think it looks incredible.
Yeah, I'm pulling up
And
the trailer
it's
now. Looks fun.
and the kind of premise of the story is that it's kind of Earth versus Moon. And there's two civilizations and kind of almost kind of a Gundam-y little vibes. Um, and so, hey, look, anything with like you can tell me that there's a moon base in the show or the movie, I'm probably into. So I'm definitely gonna give this a watch later this week.
Feels like there's a bit of expanse in here too. Whenever I see a trailer for
Yeah,
the anime,
yeah. There's a good call out. Yeah.
I'm looking at your characters. Is that CG or is it hand drawn? That's the thing. Because I'm tired. I'm tired of the CG models as characters. You got no detail. You got no life in you. And this one looks like they are hand drawn character models, CG
Yeah, the
backgrounds.
art looks gorgeous from what I can tell.
Looks amazing. When I was talking to Mr. Shinichiro Watanabe around the whole Lazarus thing last week, he specifically said it's like I will only ever do characters hand drawn because doing CG it just feels like it's a little lifeless, it's a little mechanical. But he will do CG for backgrounds of vehicles, and that makes
Hmm.
sense because you can get that sort of vibe there. So anyway, this looks cool, Sam. Can't wait to check it out. Also, can't wait to see more on Lazarus too. That would be fun times. I think that's it for this episode. I will wrap. Our theme music is by game composer Dale North. Our outro music is by our former managing editor, Terrence O'Brien. The podcast is produced by Ben Ellman. You can find me online at Devindra on, Blue Sky, all over the place. I podcast about movies and TV at the Filmcast, thefilmcast.com. Sam, where can we find you?
You can find me at Sam Rutherford on Twitter. But I was talking to Devindra and Ben earlier. I'm trying to move over to Blue Sky. Someone like if you have questions, just tweet at
Everybody
post tweet
follow
at me
Sam so he has reason to go to
It's at Sam
Twitter.
Rutherford.
at Sam
Go to
Rutherford,
Blue Sky.
Blue Sky Social. Yeah. So hit me up with some questions.
Yeah.
Give me a good reason to move over on top of all the others that already exist. I
The
don't
good
need
reason
those.
is it's where all the cool kids are, Sam. It's where the conversations are happening.
Yeah, yeah.
So being like people, it's like old Twitter where like people would actually respond with good natured responses
Yeah.
to
So
things. Like, yeah,
hit me up on Blue Sky. Give me more reasons to go use that platform.
go ahead and email us at podcast@engadget.com. We would love more questions. Leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on anything that gets podcasts. Thanks, folks. We're out.
Nice.
Okay.
Tight episode.
Are we still
We went.
live?
Oh yeah, we are still
Live,
alive.
so you can see the chat room. Don't.
I was just gonna say, if you want, I was looking for more questions to talk about.
Yes, we always have to.
Opel Vectra was asking if is Rivian a US only brand? Yes, for now. Although I think they are trying to expand, but they're still kind of ramping up production, especially because R1S is a big, expensive SUV or truck. The R2 is going to definitely be their mainstream EV, and I think that's when you're going to start to see Rivian sales open up more internationally.
It would be nice. Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, there's gonna be like a big like Tesla shaped hole in the European market now that like people are moving away from Tesla, but the Eurozone allows BYD to sell
Yeah.
in their area, right? So
BYD is going to blow up.
yeah, BYD is probably going to blow up. Like maybe Rivian is like going to be able to be competitive if you're looking for a truck, if you're looking for something with a flatbed. But man, I want to test drive a BYD so
Everybody
bad
wants
just
BYD, but yeah. Mhm.
to see how different it is.
So
Apparently, there are a
seen them in
couple of
California.
BYDs in the US right now, but they are owned by the major like US auto
Yeah,
manufacturers
a
for
lot of
research.
the I was gonna say a lot of the Chinese automakers have been doing a tour across the country, and like they've been actually kind of picking up a lot of like influencers and letting them go for test drives and stuff like that. Um, Unfortunately, I haven't got a chance to, but yeah, I would love to test drive like a BYD or even one of the Xiaomi cars. I think would be awesome.
Yeah,
So
I
your
think they don't
BYD
want
cars in
to
California, people are saying have Mexican plates. So I believe some
Oh,
are coming from
interesting.
Mexico
Yeah.
into the US there. Yeah.
Yep, yeah, BYDs are on sale in Mexico. Yep.
Deeper9 is saying he sees them in Florida quite a bit now too. So yeah.
Mears Nook has a question about a Pixel Ring. Does anybody want that?
You know how I feel about rings. What do you think, Sam?
I don't see it on the immediate horizon for Google. Because it's like one of those things. It's like a ring is never going to be your core device. It can't be your core device. It has to be an accessory. And Apple still doesn't have a ring. Samsung obviously does, and so it's like it's not one of those things where I think the mainstream has been convinced that hey, this is going to become it's going to become part of my like my core tech like kit. And so it's definitely more on the fringe, and Google that generally doesn't they're not quite as adventurous when it comes to new hardware. So maybe someday, but not anytime soon, I wouldn't think.
I feel like what would be the benefit there? I would rather a lot of these companies explore like, hey, we keep bringing up like I keep bringing up Jawbone and the Up and like how cool that thing was as a bracelet.
Hmm.
You could do a lot more with that form factor, even if it's not as big as a smartwatch. Like there's just more you could do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I love
Rings.
rings and bracelets and all sort of that as alternatives to smartwatch because I feel like for most people, smartwatch, smartphone, laptop, you're good, right? But that kind of depending on each specific person, that kind of like those components are a little bit flexible depending on what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yep. Yep. I saw a couple of good questions actually from yours, Nook. Yeah, Pixel Ring, but also stop saving. Should I just stop saving you for a car or stop saving for a car? You know what's actually pretty great or was great is those EV leases. If you don't care too much about having the newest, or actually no, if you want the newest thing but you don't want like the highest end trims, there have
Hmm.
been some really great lease deals. I saw one of around like one of the little guys. Was it the little car companies? But they have an easy EV that was under $200 in some places.
There's a point, and granted, the BZ4X is not a
Yeah,
great EV in terms of just like comparisons to rivals, but there was lease deals for under $200, maybe 160
I've
for a
seen. Yeah,
BZ4X. Well, a 200 under $200 lease deal for just a regular car is kind of insane. And that's kind of the general advice for anyone in the car market is if you're looking at an EV, you probably want to lease a new EV or buy used, because the depreciation on used EVs just like,
It's been
they
crazy.
lose 50% value in like 2 or 3 years. And so
I've seen the Ionic 6s under 30,000 now. So like you're getting like a 2022 or 2023 Ionic, but it's still a really good car. And that's a good price. Like that's what I paid basically for a RAV4 a couple of years ago. So keep an eye. It depends on what do you want like a small rental fee for something a little newer, but on the highest trim, then a
mhm.
lease may work. But also this entire industry is going to blow up. Like who knows what car prices are going to look like next
Also,
week.
for all of the like EV models that still have the CCS charger on it, I would not buy one of those. I would lease it, wait for everyone to finally move over to NACS, and then maybe consider buying it if you know you're going to hold on to it for 6, 7, however many years.
I was just reading about like the people who put in either like a hardwire EV charger versus like the one that plugs into the 240 watt
Hmm.
outlet, and like the plugins, there are fire issues, there are all sorts of issues. So that's something I'm thinking about at this point too. Mirsnook also asked about the Xbox handheld that's rumored. That's happening. That seems like there's enough out there, and Microsoft has said like they want to do it. So that is definitely happening. The question is like, what will it actually be, and how
And
will it
when,
perform?
like, is it going to be this holiday or probably more likely
Yeah.
a 2026 thing?
I don't understand Microsoft because like guys, clearly people want to use Windows in handheld form. Put so many more resources on that. Like make that the thing because people want it. They're buying devices right now and living with a bad Windows experience.
But yeah, someone at the beginning of the show in chat reminded me that it was Microsoft's 50th birthday,
Yeah,
I believe last week. Unfortunately, we weren't invited.
I was
But
invited. I did
oh,
not.
okay.
Yeah. We were invited, but they were like, "Hey, we'll have some AI news." I'm like, "You're having Microsoft Build in May, and you want people to go to Seattle twice within a few months?" I'm like, "Is this worth it?"
I
I
heard I
don't
heard Ballmer was there, even though he
Balmer was
doesn't
there, a
really
bunch
work
of
for
folks were
Microsoft
there.
anymore. But
The main thing out of that was that one of the an employee really stood up and protested Microsoft's AI involvement in basically in military efforts, and they did that when Mustafa Suleiman was on stage. He is their AI CEO,
mhm.
and I've read his book. I've listened to chats with that guy. I actually don't think I can fully trust that guy, just like I can't trust Sam Altman too. So that employee was immediately fired, but that was an interesting development, to see happen in public at their biggest event. Yeah. All right. Anything else, folks? Yes, we should make a biker gang. I feel like no, we should. It would be an EV scooter gang. That's
Well,
such
no, I mean,
That would be
I would love
so
an
dorky.
electric scooter gang. Yeah.
I would love an EV motorcycle, but I don't have a motorcycle license, so that's probably not going to happen.
Nobody should have motorcycles.
But
And
the
that's
idea
really
of like even just like a dirt bike type of thing, like
it's cool.
EV, is such a good like getting around town thing.
I'm
Um,
afraid of the amount of torque those things have.
Too much
Like,
torque. Too many
yeah,
outlets.
like
Yeah.
so much torque because like electric motors just have more torque than ICE
Yeah.
motors, period.
Your
yeah,
head's too fragile.
Just yeah,
Ben, I will say
it
you can
seems scary to
always
me.
turn the power down, but if you want more power and the motor can't handle it, then you can't just dial the power up. So it's nice to be able to have that freedom if you are, you got get your
I
Sonic
feel
on and you got to go fast.
the one dad rule I would have with my kids is like no freaking motorcycles. They are stupid inventions that have killed many people because there's like no safety.
Yeah, but every single person who died on a motorcycle looked cool doing it.
Yeah, they did for maybe half a second until you see the aftermath of what happened.
Yeah.
after
Oh,
that.
and so that's the other thing. My when my dad was in his 20s, he had a really bad motorcycle accident, and that will
Oh
probably be the reason
no.
I never own a motorcycle. But
Mm.
the idea
Mhm.
in my head is really nice, and for getting around
The idea
town
is cool. What's
seems
cool
super
is like
breezy.
a low speed, really chill, breezy, scooter type deal or whatever. Anyway, folks, we should probably wrap this.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Um,
joining
oh,
us.
oh, Mears Nook had one last question. Do you
Mhm.
think phone releases will ever stop the yearly hardware release? Not in the near term.
Not in the near
Th-
term, although things are going to look different. I think a lot of things will look different. If people are
I
not
mean,
buying
we'll see in 2 weeks whether or not these tariffs like go up, down, or sideways.
they
You're talking in the sense of like this is the new normal,
it
but we
is
don't
dude,
know what the new normal
what
looks
is
like
the new
because
normal?
we
Matt,
thought there was a new normal last week.
what is the new normal is sheer uncertainty.
well,
There's
and
just
there's
we don't
clearly
know what the
no
price is going
plan,
to be like.
right? All of the
Yeah.
the tariff stuff is just purely like reactionary or because Trump feels like punishing China. And so yeah, it's gonna take a long time for anyone to figure out what this means
Yeah.
going forward.
You know how trade works is with stable actors understanding like how like, oh, your money is worth this much.
Yeah.
I owe you this much. That's how everything works. We cannot we until this administration is out, that's not going to be a thing. And honestly, China's going to be pissed off at the US for a long, long time. So the new normal is sheer insanity and uncertainty. Like who knows? Prices will definitely get higher. They're not going to get lower, unfortunately. So yeah. It sucks out there, folks. Cherish your current tech. Learn to repair your current tech. Is your smartphone treating you badly? Is it not lasting long enough? See how much a battery replacement costs. And hey, if you need to upgrade, maybe a mid-range phone makes more sense than whatever the heck is $1,000 at this point, right? All right.
Okay, so thanks everybody for watching. You remember stuff we forget. You just make the every recording better. OBS by Devindra, camera switching, which is it's fine by me. Thanks to DPro9, thanks to Declan, thanks to Mark Dell and Mears Nook. Welcome, Mears Nook. I don't think we've
Good
seen you
questions.
before,
Good
but
questions.
yeah, you've had some really good questions. Hope you stick around and come back next week. Hello and goodbye to Opel Vectra C Dashcam, Mo Esquire, D-Man, Solidus T. Sorry if I didn't mention anyone else, but you can always come back and say, hey, you forgot me. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.